Let us begin by reading the word problem. A family of corn growers made a profit of $3,750 during their first month on the farm. However, due to the season change, more birds began to make daily visits to their farm and cause major damage to their crops. By the end of their second month, the family suffered a loss and were $1,500 in debt due to crop damage and replanting. How much loss did the family suffer from over the course of a month? Let us begin our strategy for problem solving by analyzing the problem. Again, when analyzing the problem, the first thing you want to identify is a question that's being asked. In this case, we're asked, how much loss did the family suffer from over the course of a month? So now that it is that we know what the question is asking of us, we actually know what our variable is going to represent. So let us go ahead and jump to step 2 and assign a variable. So in this case, we'll go ahead and use the variable x, and again, any variable will do. And we'll go ahead and let x represent the amount of loss that the family suffered from over the course of a month. So again, it's simply the question reworded in the form of a statement. So there we go. That's going to be our assignment of the variable. So now let's go back to analyzing the problem and see what other information we can extract. So let's see. We know the family made a profit of $3,750 during their first month on the farm. And we also know the family suffered a loss and were $1,500 in debt due to crop damage and replanting. So how can we create an equation from this? Let's talk about some of the key words being highlighted. So here we go. In red, one of the key words is profit. Profit is represented by a positive quantity or addition, but in this case we're going to have a positive $3,750 in dollars. Now, what else do we have? Another keyword that's highlighted is suffered a loss. Now, loss, whenever you lose something, that's an indicator of subtraction. So suffered a loss is going to be an indicator of subtraction. And the other keyword here is going to be $1,500 in debt. Now, whenever you're in debt, that means you owe people money. So that means you have less money or a negative amount of money. So here we go. We're going to try to combine these all into one equation. So let's see. The first thing given was that you have a profit of $3,750. So that's going to be a positive quantity, again, because it is a profit, not a loss. So we'll start off with that. So that's what the farmers originally had, a profit of $3,750. Now, what happened is they suffered a loss. So again, if you suffer a loss, we're going to have to subtract from this quantity. And the question is, how much of a loss did they suffer? Well, we don't know that amount, so we're going to represent that by a variable x. And now another keyword being here is going to be and were. This is going to be an indicator of an equal sign. So again, you start off with the profit, you suffer a loss, we've already covered that. And now and were, so we're going to go ahead and do an equal sign. And $1,500 in debt. Now, I have noted that it's an indicator of subtraction, but we could also write that as a negative value. So instead of just simply 1,500, we're going to have to account for the fact that they're in debt, and the way we do that is by including a negative sign. So there we go. That's going to be our equation. You have a profit of $3,750, and then you suffer a loss. We're going to have to subtract from that quantity. And now we know that the family is $1,500 in debt, and we justify that by a negative sign. So that's going to be our equation. So now we're going to want to go ahead and solve the equation. So let us start off by bringing down the original equation found in step 3. So we have 3,750 minus x is equal to negative 1,500. Now again, the goal is to get the variable x completely by itself. The problem right now is this positive 3,750. The only way to eliminate a positive value is by subtraction. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and subtract 3,750 from both sides. So we'll go ahead and start off with the same equation. So 3,750 minus x, and that's going to be equal to negative 1,500. And now, as mentioned, we're going to have to go ahead and subtract 3,750 from both sides. So now the negative 3,750 on the left and the positive 3,750 on the left as well are going to cancel each other out, and we're going to be left with simply negative x. Now on the right hand side we have negative 1,500 minus 3,750. We can rewrite this as the following. So we'll have minus 1,500. And we're going to change that subtraction sign. That's going to be changed into plus a negative 3,750. So keep in mind that this subtraction up here is the same thing as adding a negative quantity. So that's going to be our equation. So now what we're going to want to do, we're going to want to combine everything on the right hand side by simplifying. And we'll go ahead and do that off to the side of scratch work. Now what's nice about this is that both the 1,500 and the 3,750 are negative. So we're going to simply just add them on up. So we'll have, do that off to the side as scratch work, negative 3,750. And we're going to add to that negative 1,500. So we're going to do 0 plus 0, which is 0. 5 plus 0, which is 5. 7 plus 5, which is 12. So we bring down the 2 and make a note to add a 1. And we're going to have 1 plus 3 plus 1, which gives us a 5. And then we bring down that negative sign. So that's going to be our number on the right hand side. So again, we're going to have a negative x, bringing that down. And we just showed the simplification on the right hand side is equal to negative 5,250. So all we really need to do is we want to get the x completely by itself. The problem is that negative sign right in front of it. So ideally, negative x, this is the same thing as negative 1 times x. So we're multiplying x by a negative 1. Again, since we're doing multiplication, we want to do the opposite operation, which is division. So what we want to do is we want to divide both sides by a negative 1. So then on the left-hand side, we're going to be left with a negative x divided by a negative 1. Well, that's going to give us simply x. Bring down the equal sign. And then on the right-hand side, we're going to have a 5,250, which is negative, divided by a negative 1. And that's going to leave us with 5,250. So that's our value for x. So let's go ahead and say our conclusion clearly. So since the question was how much loss did the family suffer from over the course of a month, we're going to go ahead and state that the family suffered a loss of $5,250 over the course of a month. Again, our conclusion is simply the question asked, reworded in the form of a statement. So now that we have the value for x, let us go ahead and check our solution. When checking the result, remember we always start off with the original equation found in step 3. So we'll have 3,750 minus x is equal to negative 1,500. However, we now know the value of x. We're going to go ahead and substitute that in. 3,750 minus x, which we found to be 5,250, is equal to negative 1,500. So the right hand side is something we can do there, so we're just going to go ahead and bring that on down. We'll end up with negative 1,500. And on the left hand side, we're going to have to simplify this out. So we'll go ahead and do that off to the side of scratch work. So what we want to notice is that we could also rewrite it as 3,750, and as we did previously, plus a negative 5,250. So now these two are the exact same thing. So adding a negative is the same thing as subtraction. So now that the two values are opposite sign, we have a positive 3,750 and we have a negative 5,250. We're going to go ahead and simplify it down. And the way we're going to do so is using the subtraction rule. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about the absolute value of each individual number. The absolute value of 3,750 is simply itself, 3,750. However, the absolute value of negative 5,250 is a positive 5,250. When you take the absolute value of both, the larger one is going to be the 5,250. So we're going to subtract from that the smaller one, which is 3,750. And now we'll do 0 minus 0. It's going to give us a 0. 5 minus 5 is also going to give us a 0. 2 minus a 7, we can't do that, so we need to borrow from the 5 next door, which will make that a 4, changing our 2 to a 12. So now we're going to do 12 minus 7, which is 5, and then 4 minus 3, which is 1. And now we have to pay attention to the sign. The top number came from the negative value of 5,250. So what wins is the negative sign. So ideally we have a negative 1,500. So simplifying this on the left, we end up with a negative 1,500. And we always ask ourselves, are these two equal? And indeed, negative 1,500 is equal to negative 1,500. So that verifies that our solution is correct.